Comma dot. Module 6. Hey beautiful people. My name is Nats. Today I'm going to take you through the Module 6 of the TEFL Universal course. I've enrolled at TEFL Universal. You can find the link in the description box. It's really super cheap and really easy. You have 6 months to complete the course, and it consists of 10 modules, with a quiz at the end of each module of 15 multiple choice questions, and you need 40% to pass. But even if you're doing another course, I'm certain that these videos will assist you to pass and prepare you for your online teaching adventure. If you're on a similar journey, please subscribe, like and share. 6.1 Teaching Listening. 6.1.1 Key Points. When comparing the 4 language skills of listening, speaking, writing, and reading, listening is by far the most neglected. Listening is often viewed as the easiest of the 4 skills and, hence, requiring less practice. But this is untrue. The mechanics. 1. Listening must be integrated with the other 3 skills. 2. Early classroom work must be based on the sounds of the language. Clearly, this is more difficult for Chinese and South Korean learners than, say, Spanish and Italian learners. So, some groups of learners will need more attention in specific areas. 3. You need to ensure that the learners experience a wide range of listening situations. 4. A key objective will be to let the learners experience a wide range of styles, for example, formal and informal. 5. The listening materials must also aim, as soon as possible, to allow the learners to respond to the speaker so that listening is one part of an interactive program of learning. 6. Remarking. Much of this will be focused on whether or not they grasp the information, more of a yes-no type marking, with an explanation as to why the answer given is correct or incorrect. Listening passages. 1. You need to ensure that the learners do not get overtired and make mistakes. 2. Always select materials which are appropriate to the level of the learners and their culture. 3. Ensure appropriate length in line with learner levels. 4. Ensure appropriate speed in line with the level of the learners. 5. Your job is to provide your learners with tasks that target specific sub-skills, not just listening for information but also targeting sub-skills such as listening to instructions, predicting, etc. 6.1.2 Helping learners to overcome barriers to listening. The difficulties for a learner listening to a language in which they are not yet fluent are substantial. For example, when compared with a native speaker, L2 language learners may find that they may not be able to distinguish particular sounds adequately. They may be unfamiliar with commonly used lexis. The speaker may appear to speak very quickly. The sentence construction may differ radically from their language. They may be unable to distinguish the critical elements from the unimportant parts of the message. Unlike native speakers, they may be unable to predict the speaker's message before it has been completed. Authentic speech creates problems for the listener. Much of the authentic spoken language we listen to is spontaneous and informal. This spontaneity presents problems for the language learner. Brevity of chunks. Speech is typically broken into shorter chunks. In conversation, for example, people usually take turns to speak, in short turns of a few seconds each. Pronunciation. The pronunciation of words is often blended or slurred, and noticeably different from the phonological representation of a given word in the dictionary. Lexis. The lexis is often colloquial. In spoken English, for example, you might use guy whereas in writing you would use man. Grammar. Informal speech tends to be somewhat ungrammatical. Utterances do not usually divide neatly into sentences. A grammatical structure may change in mid-utterance. Unfinished clauses are common. Noise. There will be a certain amount of noise or bits of the discourse that are unintelligible to the listener. This may be because the words are not spoken clearly or are not known to the listener. Redundancy. The speaker typically says a good deal more than is strictly necessary for conveying the message. Redundancy includes such things as repetition, paraphrasing, and the use of fillers such as I mean, well, Section non-repetition. The discourse will not be repeated verbatim. That is, in a typical face-to-face chat or discussion, the listener may only have one chance to hear and understand everything that's being said. How can you help your learners to overcome some of these barriers? Time to reflect. Re-listening practice. What do you think you can do to overcome some of the above barriers when your learners are listening to a recording or listening to you while you read a passage? Take some time out to make a drink or sandwich and reflect on this. Then you can return to check your thoughts with what we think below. You can pause now to do so. Well done. 1. At an early stage, you need to help your learners to familiarize themselves with the sounds of the language. This will mainly come from you. So, forget about restricting your teacher talking time (TTT) in the early days. Ensure you talk a lot. 2. Choose material that is appropriate for the level of your learners and the culture and background that they come from. It should not place any additional burdens on the learners. 3. Ensure that the speed of the speaker and the length of the material are appropriate for your learners. This might take the form of 3 short lines of dialogue for elementary learners or as much as 3 or 4 minutes of listening for more proficient learners. 4. In the early days, ensure the speaker's voice is clear and is not heavily accented. For best results, you should do the speaking or dictation onto a recorder. They will be getting used to your voice, and so there'll be no additional burden at the early stages of listening. 5. Before you introduce them to a specific listening activity, always ensure they know most of the words in the passage they will be listening to. Tell them about the situation context before they listen, for example. A brief description of the Great Wall. Ensure the context situation is as relevant as possible. Identify any problematic words or grammatical instructions or expressions and explain these before they listen. Of course, if you make up your own materials, you will avoid these issues. Ask them to predict what they might hear in this descriptive piece about the Great Wall, for example. When it was built, who built it, its size, length, how many people visit it, etc. Arouse their interest. If they have completed a similar descriptive activity previously about a different topic, refer to that and discuss what they heard in the previous activity. Encourage them to think back as to what came out of the previous activity. Again, to arouse their interest and focus their concentration, give them a challenge. After listening, I wonder who will be able to tell me how old the Great Wall is and how many people visit it each year. 6. Through time, let the learners experience a wide range of situations. This is so important because of their need to interpret different situations correctly and to be able to respond appropriately. 7. Through time, let them experience a wide range of styles, from the very formal language used in a TV interview to the far more informal language used between learners or close friends. Also, introduce them to different accents. Somewhere, there's likely to be other native English speakers, for example, working in a hotel or hospital, backpackers, etc. Invite them in. They'll be delighted to help. 8. Through time, the listening materials should also aim to let the learners respond to the speaker so that listening is one part of an interactive program of learning. In other words, the learners will not merely listen, but will also respond with answers, questions, actions, group discussion, form filling, drawings, and so on. 9. In real life, people listen for many different reasons. In the classroom, your task is to try to provide the learners with tasks that target specific sub-skills. This will not always involve simply listening for information but may also include skills such as listening to instructions, listening for keywords, or predicting. 6.1.3. Listening sub-skills. Here are the critical listening sub-skills that you will help your learners to develop, depending on their level. 1. General listening. General listening tasks can be provided for learners at any level. They can be quite brief for beginners or considerably longer for more advanced learners. The text may be a short dialogue or a description, and several general questions may arise from the text. The questions will often be given to the learners after they have listened to the dialogue or the passage. 2. Listening for specific information. Some listening practice tasks can also require the learners to listen out for particular pieces of information, just as we do at the airport departure lounge or in the train station. In this case, the learners must be aware of the task before they listen to the passage or the dialogue. 3. Listening for the message. With some listening tasks, the learners may listen for a complete message rather than for specific pieces of information. The question, or questions, can be given to the learners either before or after the listening task. 4. Following instructions. Following instructions, or directions, can provide an excellent form of listening practice. These activities are commonly designed around charts, tables, diagrams, maps, drawings, and so on. The learners may not be required to say anything immediately in response but may transfer information received from you or a recording onto a table, map and so forth. In this way, they demonstrate their understanding. 5. Predicting. The skill of predicting what might happen next can be effectively used to focus the listening task and provide a clear guide to a learner's level of understanding. For example, you could read this out loud. The group decided to walk to the top of the hill. On reaching the top, they saw the haunted house. The old, rusted gate creaked as they walked towards the door. Suddenly, on reaching the door, they heard a noise coming from inside. Then ask them to predict what happened next. 6. Listening for the gist. The learners listen to a text and try to formulate the main ideas of the text. A variation would be to get the learners to listen to a text and then have them assign a title that best reflects the main idea or theme. 7. Discerning attitude. Advanced learners will listen to a text and infer a speaker's attitude or general tone, which can be either implicit or explicit. 6.1.4. How to structure an effective listening lesson. We haven't covered your full lesson planning session in Module 7 yet, so we're going to introduce you further to the 5-step lesson plan structure, softly, during these skills sessions. So, when we get to the full lesson planning session in Module 7, you will have a good grasp of the lesson planning structure. It's the same structure for listening, speaking, writing, and reading lessons. And grammar lessons. So, that's good. Here's how to plan your listening lessons. Step 1. Opening. Engage your learners and capture their interest with a warmer, related to previous learning where possible. Can you remember what a warmer is? Good. Tell them what is about to take place and how it will happen, for example. You will listen to a recording. You are going to hear a family discussing their holiday plans. Tell them about the importance of this activity and how it will help them. Step 2. Introduction of new material. Address any potential misunderstandings. Ensure that your learners continue to be engaged, interested. Ensure you are taking everyone along, to the best of your and their ability. Emphasize and reiterate your critical points made in Step 1, i.e. the importance of this new learning and how it will help them. Vary your approach to ensure you make information accessible to all your learners. Ensure that your learners actively take in information, for example, by asking well-structured questions, asking them to demonstrate some point, asking them to give you their example, eliciting information from them, using board work, using different types of realia including the learners themselves. Step 3. Guided practice. Continue to ensure your learners are engaged, interested. Clearly state and model behavioral expectations, for example. You are going to hear a family discussing their holiday plans. After that, on this worksheet, you are going to list where each member of the family would like to go. Ensure that all your learners have multiple opportunities to practice. Scaffold the practice exercises from easy to hard. Monitor and correct learner performance. Guided practice is often composed of a series of comprehension activities developing different listening sub-skills, such as recognizing sounds, words, phrases, cohesive devices, processing authentic speech that has pauses or corrections, and inferring information. In the guided practice step, learners reproduce the targeted structure in a controlled activity to focus on accuracy. Step 4. Independent practice. Continue to ensure your learners are engaged, interested. Clearly state and model behavioral expectations. Ensure appropriate tasks are set so that your learners can attempt to demonstrate independent mastery of the objective or progress towards this. This could be a pair discussing what they heard or discussing their planned holiday. Provide opportunities for extension, additional activity for those who finish early and have completed the main activity successfully. Independent practice is often composed of you focusing on a specific element, such as lexis, grammatical structure, register, or style, to ensure that learners have understood the content on different levels and can apply comprehension to an element of language. In the independent practice step, learners use the new learning in a free and authentic communicative situation, the focus of which is on developing learner fluency as opposed to accuracy. Step 5. Closing. Continue to ensure your learners are engaged, interested. Allow your learners to summarize what they have learned. Ask your learners to state the significance of what they have learned. Provide all your learners with opportunities to demonstrate mastery of or progress toward the objective, if any have not yet had sufficient opportunity to do so. Set a homework activity if necessary. This will not necessarily be a listening activity. It could be a short written piece related to deriving from what they have listened to and heard. This will give you another opportunity to assess their mastery. 6.1.5. Effective listening strategies, exercises and activities. If your learners are going to be able to operate effectively, they need to be exposed to a wide variety of different listening strategies and activities. Your goal is to make these listening events interesting, productive, enjoyable, and fun, but not too much fun with adults. Here are some of the most practical approaches. 1. Strategies. Questions and answers. Very short exchanges can be used to provide elementary or lower intermediate learners with practice in listening and understanding. The learners themselves can later practice exchanges like this, preferably recorded. Recording the learners is almost always enjoyed by learners even when they laughingly protest a little at the beginning, saying they are shy about hearing their voice on the recording. Short dialogues. How the dialogue is recorded will affect its authenticity. Traffic noise or cafe noise in the background adds a further degree of authenticity. Short passages. Unlike dialogues, it's not so easy to make the language authentic in a short passage. However, a story with a touch of humor always appeals to learners. A wide range of factual questions could be prepared together with 1 or 2 deductive questions. Reordering information. The learners are given several items on paper, written out in the wrong order, actions, description, events, and so on. They are also given 1 or more specific tasks, and then they listen to the text. The tasks may involve categorizing information, reordering actions in the correct order, classifying events, etc. Information transfer. Information transfer activities involve learners translating part of the spoken message into a new format, such as a table, chart, picture, map, and so on. They may then use this new format to carry out a further activity, such as working in pairs with a friend to solve a related problem. Note that information transfer activities involve any transfer of any information in a text or utterance to a new format. These include a listening passage to a table, a reading text to a dialogue, a telephone conversation to a map, and so on. Using humor to develop listening skills. Language learning is much less painful if the learners have something to smile about from time to time, and a bit of fun can do this. Dictation. Dictation went out of fashion in language teaching for a long time, but it can be a valuable form of listening practice, and it has now returned in revised forms. The important thing is that the dictation passage should typically be one which the learners have met already. It would normally be inappropriate with English language learners to give them a dictation passage that they have never met before. This would be more like a test, which is very different from practice. Jigsaw listening. This involves learners listening to different parts of a passage or a conversation, or different passages in different conversations, and then coming together in pairs to try to complete a particular task. Each person has a different piece of information. The task might involve, for example, completing another dialogue or filling in a table or drawing a map. With a large class, the learners can first be divided into two groups so that they listen to two different recordings. Then they get together in pairs with one person from each group. It is possible to prepare such materials yourself, but you will occasionally find that jigsaw listening and reading tasks are provided in your coursebook. 2. Some listening exercises and activities. Choose passages, topics and exercises that are participative, interesting, and good fun. Here are some suggestions. Add on. One learner starts with I went to the market, and I bought some apples. The next learner adds to this, I went to the market and I bought some apples and a spoon. This continues until the sentence is unmanageably long, and the learners start to get a bit confused. This could be a competitive game with teams, but it would be better as a cooperative activity. It's good fun, and you can change the model sentence to anything you like so that you can do this again and again in future classes. Pass the message. This activity can be used to emphasize the importance of listening. One learner thinks of a message and writes it down. The learner then whispers this to another learner, swiftly, and so on. The message can only be said once, but it must be spoken clearly. Nevertheless, however clearly the message is spoken, it will almost always be distorted in some way or other, which often produces a comical sentence. It can then be compared with the original sentence. Think of a verb. Each group writes a short passage of about 3 to 4 sentences. The verbs, excluding the verb to be, are removed from the passage. One member of, say, Group A, then reads out the passage and the other groups suggest appropriate verbs to fit the space. The final version of the newly constructed passage can then be read in full and is then compared to the original passage. This will often provide a lot of laughs. It can be done again in future classes by changing the verb to a noun or adverb, i.e. linked hopefully to whatever else they are studying. What's the word? You spell out words quickly, and the learners must shout out the word. Hands up. You write up 5 to 10 words relating to what the learners have been currently studying. You then incorporate these words into a passage. You read out the passage. Learners put their hands up as soon as they hear each of the words. Missing word. You write up 5 words relating to what the learners have been currently studying. You read out a short passage, incorporating 4 of the words. After the passage has been read out, learners suggest the missing word. That's not right. You speak out an incorrect sentence, nothing too difficult, for example. An elephant big is. Learners must decide what the correct version should be. 6.2 Teaching Speaking. 6.2.1 Key points. Speaking is generally thought of as the first of the productive skills, the skills used for producing some language item, with writing being the second. This is not in order of importance, of course, but it is generally true that learners learn to say something before they learn to write it. Speaking is different from listening and reading, as these are receptive skills. Speaking is different from writing in that we generally, though not always, seek to write in a clear and grammatically accurate manner. In contrast, when we are speaking, we generally, though not always, break all sorts of language rules and produce hesitations and fragments of sentences that would usually be unacceptable in written language. This is why many language learners find it so difficult to understand native speakers. The learners may have practiced English by listening to smoothly spoken, Accurate BBC or CNN news speech separated into complete sentences. It may be a shock to arrive in an English-speaking country and find that there are so many different accents, with speakers who frequently make grammar mistakes and do not speak in neat little sentences. One of your aims must be to try to ensure not only that your learners can produce accurately spoken English when necessary, but also that they can understand the sometimes disjointed spoken English used by native English speakers. 6.2.2 Key features of spoken English. Of the four skills, speaking seems intuitively the most important. After all, people who know a language are referred to as speakers of that language, as if speaking encompassed all other kinds of knowing. Interestingly, outside the classroom, it is said that listening is used twice as often as speaking. Speaking is a fully interactive process of constructing meaning. It involves producing and receiving and processing information. Its form and meaning depend on the purpose of those speaking, the context in which it happens, the physical environment, the participants, and their collective experiences. It is often spontaneous, open-ended, and evolving. Speaking requires that learners know how to produce specific points of language such as grammar, pronunciation, or lexis, all of which comprise a linguistic competence. Speaking also requires that learners understand how, when, why, where and in what ways to produce language, all of which comprise a sociolinguistic competence. Speech has its own structures, conventions, and skills, different from that of written language. A good speaker, then, synthesizes this array of skills and knowledge to succeed in each speech act. When presenting speaking tasks, you should inform your learners about the language function that needs to be produced and the contexts in which it usually occurs. In a speaking lesson, be careful not to add in other new material such as lots of lexis or grammatical structures. Remember this: fluency is speaking at a normal speed without hesitation, repetition, or self-correction, and with cohesion and coherence. Accuracy is speaking, utilizing correct forms of grammar, lexis, and pronunciation. You will be guiding your learners to attain fluency more than accuracy. You can develop your learners' speaking skills by regularly focusing on particular aspects of speaking, such as fluency, pronunciation, grammatical accuracy, and body language. The primary emphasis of conversation as a skill, however, is to teach learners how to express, or produce, language. 6.2.3 Stimulating learner speaking. When planning an effective, productive, communicative speaking activity, you should ask the following questions. Section: is it practical? Consider how easy the activity is to set up and manage. For example, does it need any materials? Do the learners need time to prepare? Section: is it purposeful? Do the learners have a purpose for doing the activity? Is there an outcome? If there is no purpose or outcome, why are they doing this? Section: is it productive? How much speaking will it generate? Section: is it adaptable? How versatile is the activity type? For example, can I adapt it for a higher or lower level? Section: in essence, does it give them a reason to talk? Activities do not need to be complicated and need not be time-consuming to plan and develop. Here is a practical example to demonstrate this. Activity procedure. 1. In groups of 3, each of you please write 6 sentences about your typical daily routine. 3 sentences should be correct, and 3 should be false. 2. Take turns reading aloud 1 sentence each to your partners. 3. Can you guess which of your classmates' sentences are true or false? Explain why you think the answer is true or false. If you are not sure, you can ask them questions. This short exercise is practical and easy to manage. It has purposes of sentence construction, questioning, giving responses, querying, and explaining. It is productive. It will generate lots of discussion and fun. It could be used for any level. Also, it would have taken you only 20 minutes or so to consider and plan this in your lesson planning session. 6.2.4 Recognizing a good speaker. How will you know if you are guiding your learners to be good speakers? A speaker's skills and speech habits impact the success of any spoken exchange. Speakers must try to anticipate and then produce the expected patterns of specific conversational situations. Time to reflect. How will you recognize a good speaker? Try and do this without looking at the next section. Take some time out to make a drink or sandwich and reflect on this. Then you can return to check your thoughts with what we think below.